Welcome to Week 11 Flex Friday, y'all. I'm feeling a little Texas-y today, so I'm going to say y'all, but how are you doing today, Andy? Welcome in.
I'm doing good, man. Literally just got to my hotel room back in Monroe, Louisiana. Hadn't had a chance to go back home yet. A few days up in Knoxville, Tennessee, so we're all over the place, spreading the fantasy love and looking for buried treasure.
The beautiful South, man. I have grown a small appreciation for it in Texas, although Texas is more just its own place than the South, I would say.
Texas is unique for sure. It's unique.
Yeah, so those tuning in, Andy and I are going to give you some great flex plays for the week. Some on the higher tier, some on the lower tier, more flyers, and then a couple streamers as well. So stay tuned after the intro. So let's get this kicked off with Andy's first player for Week 11.
So to start it off, this is a guy who was real hot on waivers, and if you picked him up, I think this is a week where you should definitely play him, and that's Chandler, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. Last week, both Murray and Cook combined for 177 yards and a touchdown on just 21 carries against the Broncos. So this is still an awesome matchup. Even though the Broncos won that game, there's still a bunch of stuff going on with their defense, especially defending the run. 32nd rush DVOA, first in fantasy points allowed to the running back. And Chandler and Madison split snaps in the last game, but Chandler got almost double the carries that Madison wound up getting. And, they're kind of both held in check by New Orleans. They have a good run defense, so neither of them were super efficient, even though Chandler did wind up with a touchdown. Madison's dealing with a knee issue. It's still up in the air whether he's going to play. Even if he does play, I would still definitely start Chandler in this one. It seems like Vikings might be getting a little frustrated with what Madison's been doing as the lead back. And, even if he comes back, give Ty, the bulk of the workload. But especially if Madison's out, I think Chandler is a smash play this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got more of the quote-unquote body type for fantasy success. He's a little fat, and he does actually have some size. And like you said, he was used fairly well last week. And that's all just speaking of how he was used in the last game. Everything you said about the Broncos, 100% true. Latavius Murray looked like 29-year-old Latavius Murray. That dude is so
young man out there.
Young man Latavius Murray, dude. He's the oldest running back in the league right now that's playing or something. I forget
him, man.
They always say, but I like all the comparisons people say that he is like 60% Frank Gore, man. He really is sticking through it, but good for him. And I think that's a good matchup for Chandler.
Yeah, put him in there.
So my next guy, I'm actually going to say something that I think will just kind of tail along really well with that, and that's going to be Devin Singletary against Arizona. I think this is kind of similar to what we were saying about Chandler, where Devin Singletary got the lead in the backfield with Dameon Pierce out, but I just feel that he looked better. So even if Pierce comes back, I just tend to think Singletary is now going to be the lead guy for the Texans moving forward this year. Monster game last week, 22.6. My favorite thing about it is he did make one of our tanking teams win a game because of this monster game. You love to see it. And just when it comes down to it, Houston's offense is ascending. And even though we didn't think so at the beginning of the year, now that we've noticed they are an elite offense like that, you want the running backs on elite offenses.
Yeah, who would have thought at the beginning of the year that the Houston Texans would be such a powerhouse? I mean, we'll talk about this game a little bit later, but I mean, there's a lot of people who want to be starting for this Texans team. Cardinals, 31st DVOA versus the run. They've struggled against it all year. I like Kyler Murray being back for them, but Singletary's looked pretty good. And I don't know what's going on with Dameon Pierce, man. I traded for him in one of my dynasty leagues at the beginning of the year after he was off to a slow start, thinking I was going to cash in on something good. And I hope he turns it around. But in the meantime, it seems like it might be Singletary's job to lose at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a great play. So let's move on to your second player for the week.
So we played him last week, and he almost went nuclear. He finishes the wide receiver 17. That's DK Metcalf. Still, I think wide receiver 36, 34 on the season. And if you're playing on Sleeper, and I think a lot of different apps have this too, where it'll say like the rank of the team that they're playing, and it's going to say I think the Rams are like 7th best against the pass, and they have been pretty good against the wide receivers, but I still really think this is a good matchup for them. It's a 46.5 point over under. So you want to play your guys in high scoring games. And part of that is the Rams have only allowed 4 touchdowns to wide receivers all season, but somehow they're still 22nd DVOA versus the pass. And they're the 9th worst team against passing deep over the middle and deep to the left-hand side. And DK Metcalf is going to get at least 1 or 2 bomb attempts during the game where they're going to send him deep and see if he can come down with that. He was the wide receiver 17 last week. And when the game was on the line, he was having just kind of an okay game. And crunch time, I think that last drive, he had like 4 catches, 40 yards for them to seal it away. And, it looks like a lot of people are still starting him again this week. But if he's not in your starting lineup, I would still put him in and have some faith that this is a week where – because one of these weeks he's going to explode. And, I thought it might be last week. He came real close. If he could have got a touchdown, it would have been there. But I think this might be the week. You
definitely just got to stick with him. If he's on your team, he was such a high draft pick. And just like you said, his involvement is enough that logic would seem to say he's going to score and have a big game one of these weeks. The touchdowns have just been good. JSN had a couple games with scores. Tyler Lockett's been putting up touchdowns. I think it's just DK Metcalf next. And I'm really not afraid of that matchup. Like you said, sometimes those fantasy matchups are just, it depends on who you've played, who was out when you played them. There's so many factors that go into like fantasy point ranking things. And also they're different for wide receivers compared to the pass offense. And it can just be a numerous issue of things that really goes into those that aren't necessarily all the most trustworthy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to go with a receiver that probably my most on the edge guy this week is someone who probably is being played as a wide receiver 3 as well. But some leagues, are more of a 2RB2 wide receiver and a flex. So I'm going to go Terry McLaurin versus the Giants. We saw exactly how bad things can get against the Giants last week with what the Cowboys did. Basically, everyone on that team besides Tony Pollard somehow scored a game. CeeDee Lamb looked just absolutely amazing going off. And I think this is just going to be one of those weeks for McLaurin. It's so strange. Like, if you had told people that Sam Howell would be putting up these amazing passing stat numbers and Terry McLaurin would be just like this average, you'd be like, dude, we've been waiting for this passing volume in Washington for Terry McLaurin to be amazing. And I think it's just that it's really being shared around so much. Like, Dotson had a big game. Logan Thomas has had a couple. Curtis Samuel. There was a Jamison Crowder game mixed in there, I'm pretty sure. Like, it's just really being spread around. And I think this is going to be one of those ones for McLaurin. Like, the Giants are not very good defensively. And he could just have a monster game as Washington maybe puts up quite a number on the Giants.
Yeah, and I thought last week that playing the Cowboys divisional game, the Giants might at least show a little bit of fight with Danny Dimes going out for the season, and boy, was I wrong. This seems like a team that might be giving up, might be already thinking about next year. I think they're 25th DVOA against the pass, 23rd to wide receiver 1s, and weirdly pretty good against wide receiver 2s. So I think McLaurin is a great play this week. Dotson, I'd be a little hesitant about. Like you said, it's so weird with this offense where they're putting up so much passing volume, but doesn't seem to be like a reliable option on this team to start. It just seems like you got to put somebody in there because somebody's going to go big and just hope that that's your guy. But I think McLaurin, it's a great matchup specifically for him this week too.
Okay, so let's move on to your last flex player of the week.
So coming up next, and this is getting deep, and it hasn't really worked out when I've picked my Packers, but you know what they say, 5th time's a charm. And we're going Jayden Reed. Yeah, it's So playing the Chargers, they're the 21st worst pass DVOA, giving up the 28th most points to wide receivers. And Love has really looked pretty good in his last couple games. I think I saw he's like 6th in his PFF grade, and just watching every Packer game and watching him play, he's, playing a little bit more in rhythm. He's making some better reads, and it seems like Reed, being a rookie, is starting to step up and kind of become his guy. Even though he played 51% of snaps last week, 5 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. And I feel like they're going to get him more involved. Christian Watson is dealing with injury after injury every week, but hopefully he plays, because I saw another thing where he seems to be one of the most double covered wide receivers in the NFL, probably just because he's so freakishly fast. But that opens up the offense in so many ways for Reed to run his stuff on the outside, run his kind of medium routes. And, he's really been putting it together. So hopefully he can have a bigger role. Chargers 21st DVOA versus wide receiver 3s. And I mean, this could actually be a fun game if Green Bay comes out like they did against Pittsburgh and actually remembers how to play offense in the first half. And, the Chargers, if their offense is going, like, this could be a really fun game to watch. At least I'm hoping so. So I think he's a guy that, a little bit of a deeper league that you could start and hope that he gets some good points.
Maybe not even a deeper league, man. I had a situation where I've had to play Jayden Reed multiple weeks in a row.
Worked out okay, though.
Yeah, you do not have to convince me on Jayden Reed, dude. I was very high on him as one of those really solid second-round dynasty guys this summer, basically a dynasty wide receiver, second-round pick. And, I mean, in one of our very own leagues, I beat 6 Packer fans to Jayden Reed off the wire, just picking him up a week early, because I think he has the potential to be – I mean, I don't want to go too bullish on it, but, like, if we hadn't seen last season, like, I think you could make the argument that Jayden Reed is the best wide receiver on this team moving forward, at least with the way it's been playing out.
Yeah,
and
the most complete wide receiver on the team.
He's open the most, and he's making things the easiest for Jordan Love. So I think he's a good deep play, just like you said. Everything against the Chargers defense is a pretty good play. They put up a lot of points themselves, so I think this is great game script. And if you're going deeper, this is kind of one of those guys that you should be looking at.
Yeah.
So my last player for Flex Friday this week is going to be another wide receiver, someone we watched on Monday night, and that's going to be Courtland Sutton against Minnesota. Watching the game against the Bills, I think I hadn't got to see too much of an entire game of the Broncos so much, but Sutton isn't necessarily a stud per se, but he is definitely the best wide receiver on that Broncos team. And the way Russell Wilson has been looking, I think, when it comes down to it, I don't want to say he's all the way back, but he's definitely turned it around from what we saw last year. I think the announcers did a really good job just about talking about what he's looked better at. He does look a little faster than last year. And when it comes down to it, the reason I'm talking about Russell Wilson is if Russell Wilson looks serviceable, Courtland Sutton as the 1A in that passing attack should be serviceable as well. And he's actually been very solid over the past 4 or 5 weeks. He's not a wide receiver 1 type, but he's their red zone threat, and he's still making plays for that offense.
Yeah, I mean, Russ, after their bye week, or I want to say it was their bye week, it was really playing the Packers, I feel, that started to turn this Broncos team around. They got their mojo going again, and they're looking like kind of a formidable team. And it's, thinking Vikings with no Kirk Cousins and maybe Justin Jefferson versus the Broncos is going to be an exciting matchup to watch on Sunday, but I think it's going to be a fun game. I mean, Sutton had 11 targets and 8 catches last week. You love to see the volume. And if Russ is putting it together, I mean, Sutton was drafted to be a really good wide receiver. And there's been so much potential for him this whole time. And could be kind of Devontae Parker situation where a little late career bloom might be happening. So I like that play.
Okay, so let's move on to our quarterback and tight end streamers for the week. Who are you going to get us kicked off with?
Man, I feel like I used all my tight end ammo telling everybody to get Dalton Schultz and Trey McBride. So hopefully you've just got them on your team. At this point, I would play those guys, play the guys who have been playing really well. At this point in the year, we kind of know who that is. And this week specifically, it's, Kelsey has a great matchup against the Eagles. Andrews tonight has a great matchup. So all these stud tight ends have good matchups. So going real deep, this is a guy who's probably on waivers. I had to pick him up in one of my leagues. That's Tyler Higbee. So not quite as confident, coming off a 0-catch game, which is always rough. It kind of worked out for Gabe Davis last week. He I think led the Bills in receiving, even though it didn't turn into a whole bunch of fantasy points. But Seattle 22nd DVOA versus the tight end. They're allowing the 9th most yards to the position. Though only a couple touchdowns. I think this defense just kind of has been stifling up in the red zone. But he was also dealing with a bit of an injury, a bit of a hand injury. Same with Stafford after the bye week. Hopefully they're feeling a little bit better. And this is a good matchup to exploit against the Seattle defense. So, I'm not feeling great about it, but if you're really in need, you're like me, maybe you traded for Dallas Goedert. He got injured. Everybody good was already picked up and you got to just scramble to make something happen. Then I think this is a guy you can play.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying is very true, right? There's a lot of guys that we have talked about, or just any show, any Twitter account, everything has mentioned for the past 4 or 5 weeks when it comes to tight end. You listed a couple: Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, we talked about a bunch, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, Taysom Hill, even if he's in that position in your league. All of these guys, I probably would be playing over these flyers that we're going to cover today.
Yes.
But just like Andy said, Dallas Goedert going down, I think, is the perfect example, because someone in every league was relying on Dallas Goedert, and most teams do not roster 2 tight ends just in general. So, you're probably going to have to go get someone. So I think Higbee is on that list. Another guy that I'm going to talk about today is going to be Cade Otton at San Francisco. Now, San Fran is not a good matchup for tight ends, especially if you're going off kind of what we talked about earlier, where, on Sleeper, it says a good fantasy matchup. But I think from what we saw of San Fran last week, they had a rough stretch of games where they lost way more than we thought they would, 3 in a row. And they came out last week and basically curb stomped the Jaguars. They took it to them. And I think what's going to happen this week with the Buccaneers is honestly something very similar. So I just see Cade Otton kind of finishing this game with maybe 5 catches, 50, 60 yards, bunch of checkdowns. They're coming down late, garbage time. He's checking it down with that pass rush. I don't know. I think if I'm going there, Cade Otton had a big game 2 weeks ago, nothing this week. He's not a super trustworthy guy, but I think he's at that top end of streamers I'd be looking at for this week. And just based off his performance last week, I don't really think he's going to be that highly owned. So I think you can go get him.
Yeah. Hopefully you're not in this predicament. I guess that's really what I got to say. Hopefully you don't have to play these guys, but in case you do, these are 2 guys that I think you can throw in against. If you're taking a dart throw, I think these are some of the most educated dart throws you could be taking.
100%. So who are you playing at QB this week?
So coming back, I see he's only 42% started. Coming back off injury, that's Justin Fields. He practiced in full. He should be good to go. Lions 10th DVOA versus the pass, but allowing the 22nd most points to opposing quarterbacks. They've only allowed 140 rush yards to quarterbacks. However, last year in both games against the Lions, Fields ran for over 130 yards in each game. I have to imagine the Lions are going to be preparing for these games a little bit differently, but that's always good to see somebody have success against a specific team. Really, though, they haven't played too many rushing quarterbacks. Lamar had a decent game rushing against them, 36 yards and a touchdown. I think this is a guy you drafted him to be high, and he was finally starting to look a little bit like that guy after the Commanders game when he putting up a bunch of points. And so hopefully coming off of injury, playing a division rival, that this offense will be moving a little bit better and he'll be feeling healthy enough to run around and hopefully run one in the end zone.
For sure. And I mean, what does he have going for him as a running threat? He hurt his hand. He didn't hurt his ankle. He didn't hurt his knee, right? So I'm sure he's been running around. None of that's changed. And Detroit's going to put up points on them. So just like you said, I think you trust him coming back from injury. The guy I'm going to go with, basically a similar situation. He just went last week, and that's going to be Kyler Murray at Houston. I think getting our first glance at Kyler for the year last year, he looked pretty good. He scrambled around very well, which I think was honestly more important to witness than him throwing the ball, just because he's coming off that ACL injury. I just love watching Kyler Murray run around, man. The whole toddler steals an iPhone analogy is the perfect analogy to watch Kyler Murray run. He had 18 points last week. He didn't have a passing touchdown. He did save himself with 30 rushing yards, basically, and a rushing touchdown. But I just think at Houston, just like last week, dude, Houston looked really good against the Bengals, and I think they're going to score points, and Kyler's going to have to throw the ball more this week. We already discussed Trey McBride. Another guy that I think as a late flyer in the Jayden Reed category of players, someone I actually talked about as a breakout on the Dynasty Pros, just a little short this week, is Michael Wilson. I think I was in on him earlier this season. I think he flashed a little bit, and I'm curious to see what Kyler Murray being back could do for that passing offense as he kind of just hopefully clicks a little more.
Yeah, no, I like this play. I think Texans 20th against the pass DVOA, allowing around that same amount of points to fantasy quarterbacks. I think Kyler being back, Josh Dobbs is running this offense well, but Kyler's looking like he's back in form. I'm really excited for this game. Another one where you think you're not going to be excited for back in September, but I like this play, and that leads right into the game that I want to talk about, which is the Cardinals and the Texans. Kind of like you said, I think you're pretty much starting a lot of people in this game. Pretty much everybody on the Texans you want to start. And on the Cardinals, I like this game for Murray. I like this game for Hollywood, especially. The Texans are 24th against wide receiver ones. So I think this is a great matchup. That was his guy last year, Hollywood having all those targets. At least the first part of the year, he was a high-end wide receiver one through the first weeks until Hopkins came back and then was still good. I think McBride is a great start. And Michael Wilson has a little bit of a flex play. It's 49 point over under, so it should be high scoring and should be a good time.
Yeah, I love it, man. Just like you said, I cannot believe that at week 11 during the season, we are saying the sentence, start your Texans. You fire them up, man. You fire up multiple wide receivers, Noah Brown if he plays, Devin Singletary, Dalton Schultz. I am so upset at myself for not making Noah Brown one of my players last week because I actually did think he was going to have a good game. I just did not make him one of our flex guys. But my game of the week, I'm going to go Broncos versus Minnesota. We discussed some players in this game as well, right? That's kind of our pattern every week is these are the games we're looking for when we're kind of going a little more long-term, or not long-term, but like long shot flex plays, right?
Yeah.
43 over under. And I got to say, dude, Josh Dobbs is just like one of my favorite players now. I love that dude. The fact that he posted the Creed meme of him scoring on his like Instagram or whatever, I respect Josh Dobbs so much. And he's keeping that offense afloat. Hawkinson looks good. Addison's been playing well. And I am holding out hope that Jefferson comes back this week. I'm having to make the call between Gus Edwards tonight or Jerick McKinnon, Justin Jefferson. And I'm sitting Gus Edwards and just hoping Jefferson comes back. And if I have to pivot to McKinnon, I will do it. And then just like we talked about with the Broncos as well, I think Sutton looks good. Russ has been playing well. And Javonte Williams looks really good. I think he's just kind of coming into just being far enough removed that he's really getting the workload he needs. And he looks really good in that offense.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think it should be a fun one. And how can you not like Josh Dobbs with just going from team to team, just balling out, going to NASA? Like, dude's going to go to space after this. Like, being an NFL quarterback is going to be the second coolest thing he ever does in his life. And that's wild.
I just love, too, man. His head is so shiny. It is so impressive. It's so impressively shiny. Yeah. And it's just crazy. Like, this is kind of towards the end of the show, right? We gave everyone our picks. But, like, moving forward with Josh Dobbs, I feel like he's going to be a starter next year. Whether it's
proven it,
he stays in Minnesota on like a bridge deal because Cousins is coming back, or he just signs anywhere, man. Like the dude competes and he at least gives you a chance to win games.
Yeah, no, hard to find anything negative to say about him right now. I mean, he's playing out of his mind.
But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in for Week 11 Flex Friday. And hope your picks hit, man. Good luck. We're coming up on the playoffs and the trade deadline this week, so pay attention.